I wanted to be involved in the film because I really admired Jeremy. I thought it was astonishing that someone would get up one morning and say, I want to change the world. I have an idea about a day of peace. And I thought it was particularly remarkable because he came from totally outside the sort of ring, the sort of circle of UN officials, of NGOs. He came from the outside. He was a citizen activist, and I really admired him. I think Jeremy should go on doing films. I think he should do films about other things because he's interested in so many things. But I think it's important there's a continuing record of what he's doing with Peace One Day. So yes, I think there should be more films. I don't really believe that film is a very efficient way of changing the world. And I got involved with Jeremy because I really liked him. I don't think that films shouldn't exist that try to change the world, but it's not what actually interests me at all. I'm interested in films that tell you about what a person is like, what a situation is like, what a historical event is like, the consequences of an idea, the consequences of an attitude. And I'm following Jeremy because I totally admire him and totally admire his commitment. But I remain skeptical in the face of many opponents, by the way, as to the possibility that film does actually change anything. It's very hard to change anything if you write, so why should it be any easier if you make a film? I think people should make documentaries for whatever reason they have to make documentaries. It's not my business to tell them what to do or how to make films. I'm really against that. But if you're asking me personally, all the films I love, including Jeremy's films, tell you this is what it's like. This is what it's really like. Do you want to know what it's really like? I'll tell you. I'm trying to write a book about why I like documentaries. I could envisage myself in life doing loads of other things, but I came across documentaries, and I think they reflect a number of interests of mine. I'm interested in photography as a layperson. I can't take any snaps myself. I'm interested in language. I'm interested in narrative. I'm interested in ideas. And documentaries are kind of wonderful, creative, massive road accident in which all these things collide and mysteriously don't destroy each other but enhance each other. And I also think that the act of making a documentary is capable of transforming reality, that when you look at something hard enough, it becomes something special and something different because of the understanding you bring to looking at it. It's very hard for me to say I'm proudest of any Storyville because it's a wonderful kind of promiscuity that's afforded by looking after Storyville. You can fall in love and fall out of love with every film that you get involved in. Some of them don't quite work out. Some of the ones I care most about don't quite work out. But there are many unexpected successes. There are things that you think, oh, this is never going to work. Why did I ever do this? And it turns out to be a marvelous film. I also think many films are marvelous in bits and pieces. You can have a film that overall isn't quite a success, but it has two or three totally wonderful scenes in it, and you're prepared to put up with the rest of the film because of those scenes. Well, the first documentary I really loved was a documentary about French history that I went to see with my mother in 1969 called The Sorrow and the Pity. And for a long time, that was my kind of benchmark. It was what was telling me, you've got to go on, you've got to do something that's even a quarter as good as that, and then you might feel happy. But recently, I think I've changed my views somewhat. The more I watch documentaries, the more I find out about them in order to write this book, the more tolerant I become about wildly different documentaries. of the shows I watched in the last 3 months, I think Paris is Burning is the most astonishing film. It's a film in which I imagine everyone by now has died in the film, because it's a film about voguing, about dancing in pre-AIDS Harlem in New York. And there's wonderful master of ceremonies. There are wonderful characters in the film. And you pray that the people will survive, even as you know, because of AIDS, that they probably didn't. Another film I watched called Stories We Tell is the most beautiful film about an improbable subject, which is discovering who your father really was in a middle-class bohemian Toronto and Montreal background that you might say is likely to produce an extremely dull film, but every single minute by Sarah Polley, who's a very good Canadian actor, is wonderful. I watched over the last week and wrote about Shoah, which is a 9-hour long film about the Sonderkommando, about the Holocaust. It means extinction in Hebrew, Shoah, and it really, it didn't change the world. It changed how the world looked at atrocity, how the world looked at the Holocaust. It's by a maniac called Claude Lanzmann, who's 90, he's still alive. I've met him a couple of times. He threw me out of his office once because he thought I had the wrong attitude towards covering evil people. And the film is sublime, horrifying and sublime. I don't want to watch it for another decade because it's too tough. But every minute I was watching it, sitting at home, I thought, this is extraordinary. This is really what documentary film can do. And his method of interviewing people is always to ask them to describe things. When they hesitate, he'll say, you must go on. He said, you must go on. We want you to go on. Can you really tell me what it was like? Can you really say what it was like so that we can be there and we can understand it? And in the end, you do understand. I'm not sure film is educational. It's certainly educative, if you can make that distinction. It's not pedantic, because it gets you to look at what things really are. I think what you do with that knowledge afterwards is your own problem. It's your own solution. I think, you know, if you're told about horrors, you're told about this, told about that, it frees you as a citizen to be intelligent and to make a decision out of your own sense of responsibility. If you have no sense of responsibility, if you're closed off to reality and closed off to what the film is telling you, then you're not going to do anything at all. I'm skeptical about films that have a preordained message. The reason I'm skeptical about this is that I think it's a misuse of the medium. I think even more than language, film is about what happens. And if you've decided what's going to happen in your film is not really about what happens. It's a kind of predigestion of what you think is going to happen or did happen. So I think film has to be film, and it has to look at things in the way people look at things. And I think that's a clue why I like documentary films so much, because I spend my whole time reading about things that have happened. And when I see a really good film, it's about something that is happening. The fact that Jeremy can't plan ahead gives his films a wonderful spontaneity. They're not message films, they're Jeremy films. And they reproduce his anarchic sense and his sense of obligations, and that's why they're so watchable. I think Jeremy is a campaigner. I think he runs great campaigns, and I think his films serve his campaigns. In most instances, I wouldn't be interested in films like that, but I love them because Jeremy is such a great person. Yaddo is very simple. It's an online global platform where, by paying a small amount of money, you can watch a large number of documentaries when you want. We choose the documentaries. We ensure that the documentaries you find on Yaddo are really good. And wherever you are in the world, within 4 months, you'll be able to go to Yaddo in China, in Russia, in Australia, Africa, wherever. You'll be able to go into Yaddo and look at many documentaries and enjoy them. And that's the point of Yaddo. And it's I think it's the future of documentaries. I think it's harder and harder to find out where the good documentaries are. They're all over the place. Some of them are on YouTube. They'll appear on the BBC. They may be on for a bit on the BBC iPlayer. They may be on other public broadcasters' iPlayers. They're not aggregated. They're not present in one place. And nobody tells you at the moment, you've got to watch this. It's a really great film. And that's what I'll be doing for Yaddo, telling people, well, I think you should watch this. Why don't you give this a try? Yaddo will be available by the time you share this, i.e. next Friday. Well, at the moment in Yaddo, we're working on 3 different films. One film is about the life cycle of a pig. It's about the relationship between humans and pigs. It's called Oink. And essentially, it's an ecological film about the economics of the pig, how the pig is an industry, how we disregard these highly intelligent animals in order to turn them into byproducts that we then consume. And it also examines the way humans view pigs. Like, do we love them, or do we make fun of them, or are we afraid of them? And you've got a lot of literature from Animal Farm through the cartoon novel Mouse, or wherever you look, or the Black Panthers indeed, calling policemen pigs. There's a kind of abusive relationship that humans have with these delightful animals who create food for them. I want to say that I really admire Jeremy, and I think Peace One Day is a great initiative. And if the world had more Jeremys, the world would be a better place, because it would be more full with passionate people who get up one morning and decide that pessimism and cynicism notwithstanding, they wish to do something. And in Jeremy's case, they do.